You're listening to the AfterBuzz TV Network, now the largest new media platform on the web, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment.
The AfterBuzz Studios in Los Angeles, California. Presented by Maria Menounos and Bing.com and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies. This is AfterBuzz TV's Low Winter Sun After Show. We'll break down tonight's episode and get you all the latest news and gossip. And now, another post-game wrap-up show for your favorite TV show. It's AfterBuzz TV's Low Winter Sun After Show.
Such a good song.
I know, it's so awesome. I love it. Hey everybody, Bing is for doing, and we are here doing another Low Winter Sun after show. This is season 1, episode 4, Catacombs. I am Matt Lieberman, and with me tonight is the fantastic Stef Z.
What's up?
Yeah. Hi. All right, so Low Winter Sun, still early days, relatively, 4th episode. They're continuing to build out the world, and before we get really into it, I want to kind of talk about the series at large, because we were talking while we were watching it. They're still very much just unpacking everything that we saw in the pilot. We're getting like little dribs and drabs of things, but we haven't had a ton of forward motion on the plot.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like there is so many pieces of the puzzle, and it's not like they're giving us complete pieces. They're giving us like
pieces of pieces.
Pieces of pieces. So there's a lot of room left for like what's going to happen. There's a lot of room left for, do you think it's this or do you think it's that? Which I kind of like.
Yeah.
But I'm almost starting to be like, tell me something.
Something that I can hold on to.
Something solid.
Yeah. Well, what I honestly think is happening, and what I hope is happening, is they're doing all this world building so that once they've gotten it all out of the way, you know, like hopefully sooner rather than later, but let's say by episode 7 or 8, when they've set up all the pieces, they start knocking them down in quick succession and we get a whole bunch of plot. They just need us to know everything before they can do it.
I feel like that's what's going to happen. And I also feel like certain things are going to, certain pieces, like one answer is going to solve 4 puzzles.
Exactly.
Like we're starting to see how intertwined everyone really is.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I feel like that is all the backstory, and we need to know all that backstory so that when they do throw that one like bam piece, we're going to be like, oh,
of course.
Why?
Yes.
Totally.
All right. So let's jump in with Frank. We left off at the end of last episode with him crossing the border to Canada in search of Katia, and he picks that up in the opening scene this week. He sits down at the bar with that pimp and you know, sets up a deal, propositions him for a girl. He's looking for a girl with green eyes. No, emerald eyes.
Yeah.
And led to that, like, I think, kind of great scene with him and the prostitute who doesn't speak English.
Right.
And he's trying to communicate and get anything out of her, but it's useless because she doesn't understand him.
Right.
And I thought it was just kind of funny how kind of pleasant he was. He was just like, oh, Candy's great choice. He's just trying to make her calm.
It was interesting how pleasant he was, and still when he picked up, like, he was clearly not there to hurt her, not there to use her, and I feel like she was a little bit thrown, like, why is this person not using and abusing, so to speak?
Yeah.
But it was crazy to me, once he picked up the phone, she got very nervous.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's, you know, in that prostitute world, whatever, like, that's like a sign that she's not doing a good job, or, you know, like, that kind of, to me, came out of nowhere, that she was very nervous.
Yeah.
Because he was clearly like, you don't have to do anything. Do you want a drink? Do you want this? Do you want that? And then she started screaming for Dimitri.
Well, she probably works for some very scary people.
Yeah.
The one thing I was disappointed by was we didn't see what happened to Frank after he got knocked out. He got pistol whipped, and then he's just back on our side of the border.
Right. And it's like, does he have his license back? Is he going to have problems doing that? Is it going to turn up that, you know, why is his license missing? Why did his license wind up in Canada in this, you know, this place? Like, is that going to come to bite him? You know, we'll see.
We'll see. I think ultimately he got his license back. He was probably dumped out on the street, and they threw his license on top of him, and they just decided we don't need to see that.
I could picture that.
I think that
I'm with you.
That fits in. That fits in. But he's just desperate desperate to find out who controls her. He's trying to track down through the prostitute network of Windsor,
right,
where Katia is landing, and his search ultimately leads him to these really creepy catacombs, and it's really screwed up. Like, you've got that kind of like gothic like small chapel room with this guy with the white curly hair, like, whatever you want, it is yours.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, I think it's a good thing that neither one of us have a lot of experience in that type of situation.
Sure.
But, it definitely exists. I'm sure it exists more than we think. And I would have to say, I would think it'd be that creepy. You know what I mean? Like, I would feel like there would be more muscle around, like even near the creepy dude, like more people there just in case Frank got out of line or whatever. That was, for me, it was weird that you didn't see that. Like, more people handling stuff.
Especially because, as he said, there were no cameras, so it's not like they were keeping an eye on him.
Right, like case. Outside the doors, you might think that there's a person or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, I guess it's a super secretive underground whorehouse for a reason. Right. It's so secretive that they're not expecting too much trouble. I don't know, but. Right. The interesting thing, and I think that this is going to become one of the central themes of the series, is that we really don't know what our characters are thinking and how good or bad are they. Because while I think he's definitely very conflicted about it, Frank did some things that shocked me this episode.
Yeah, me as well.
Well, that prostitute wanted to know if he was a cop, and he whips out his dick,
right,
first of all. But I guess if they're like, I'm not a cop, and they're like, prove it. There's like only one of two ways to prove it.
Drugs or sex. Yeah,
drugs or sex. So he does that, but then he winds up sleeping with this other Katia. He's grappling with the fact that his Katia, he may never find her.
Right. And it's funny because what I took from that, and when we talked about this a little bit, when he was there with her and he was like, he kept saying like, what's your real name? Mm-hmm. I took that maybe that was some sort of code name, and that his original Katia was kind of a prostitute that had set him up to do something. Like, I went somewhere so different with that. I was like, maybe that's just some generic name that's used a lot with whatever, and internally it was like a false love, and she was trying to set him up for something bigger. That's where I don't know if that's correct, but again, we only have little bits and pieces, but my head spun that way.
Well, I think that it's probably a very common Eastern European name. It's just shocking.
I think it's more Russian.
Russian, yeah. But I think what it really was, because she's framed in darkness, this kind of silhouette. I think it's the hope that he had finally found her. Like, after all this searching, here she is, here in the darkness, and then it's not her again.
Yeah.
And to be without hope and without leads, to have to accept that she's dead all over again, or that at the very least he'll never see her again, really, really screws him up. And as Joe said earlier in the episode, it's been a long week.
Right.
And I think he just kind of succumbs. He just needs to be comforted, even if it's not a positive thing.
Right, which is kind of crazy, too, because if you think about it, you think about toying with one's emotions that someone you love has passed away. Yeah. Then you think with toying with the emotions that they're actually still here, but then you just can't find them. It's like I feel like he's starting to spin out, Frank. He's definitely, and I feel like somewhere in this, he's just like, the more he digs, the worse it's going to get. Like, he got pistol whipped in the face, fine. You know what I mean? Like, he gave in to one prostitute, fine. He's done two, like, kind of bad things with this, like gotten taken over. Like, if he keeps looking, there's
it's going to ruin him.
Yeah,
it's going to ruin him because it's horrible to have to mourn someone that you care about and to grieve, but to be helpless, to know that they're out there somewhere, but you're helpless and unable to find them is ruinous.
And know that they're probably in the situation that he was in, that she's probably being prostituted out now to other dudes. Like, that'd be crazy.
Well, I mean, rule 1, don't fall in love with prostitutes.
Yeah.
Because
rule number 1.
That's rule 1, because they're not going to leave the prostituting.
Don't fall in love with prostitutes.
Yes, rule number 2, don't fall in love with prostitutes. Rule number 3, don't talk about Fight Club. Yes.
Totally.
But his search has taken him all over, and it's distracting him from the matter at hand, although he's attending to some of that business this week, which is keeping his ass out of jail.
Right.
For the murder of Brendan. And he made a few stops this week. We found out early in the episode that Maya knows him. He walks into the International after coming back from Canada, and she's like, Frank effing Agnew. And it's like, how deep does this web go? Everybody knows everybody.
It's going deep.
Yeah. And we had heard about Maya's ex-husband, Sean, last week, whose name is still on the deed of the International.
Right.
We met him this week, and we're going to go into that in more detail in a bit.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about Joe and his daughter. But first, I just want to talk really quickly about a movie called The Adventures of Serial Buddies. It is a movie that the founders of AfterBuzz TV, Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro, released earlier this year. It's a really funny, twisted, dark comedy. It is available on serialbuddies.com, iTunes, and video on demand. $4.99 to rent, $5.99 to buy. A lot of people have asked, how can I help out with AfterBuzz TV? I love what you guys do. We put out over 60 shows a week, all free programming, and we're continuing to expand our operation out here. But buying or renting this movie is a way to do that, because every red cent of that money goes back into AfterBuzz TV. It's a great movie packed with celebrity cameos. Maria herself is in it, Beth Bears from Two Broke Girls, Henry Winkler, Christopher Lloyd, Christopher McDonald, Kathy Lee Gifford, Artie Lang. It's just loaded with laughs, and if you buy this great movie or rent this great movie, the money comes back to us so we can keep giving you all the great skinny on Low Winter Sun.
Woo!
Yes. All right,
Go buy it now.
Yeah, so we're getting all these details about everybody on the show. Like, I think last week and this week, really every episode since the pilot has just been giving us more of the world of Detroit and helping us better understand our characters and where they're coming from.
Right.
What motivates them. And Joe, we discover this week, has an ex-wife, has a kid. Kid gets busted shoplifting.
Right.
His daughter shoplifting potato chips and Magnum condoms.
Right.
And she's 13.
Right.
Yeah.
And also with that, right away, you can see a little bit of the relationship, because she's like, where do you think I learned this from?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can right away, it's like their relationship is just defined as they don't really have a good one.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, he starts talking about how later in the episode, how he's got this case and it's eating up all his attention. And as soon as it's over, you know, he can give her more attention. She's like, you must have been working this case for the last 13 years.
Yeah. And he made some choices in this too to bring her along to some places. It wasn't like he just took her home to, you know, grandma so that she could be out of the way and safe. And I don't know if it's a little bit that he wants to bring her into his world, or he's nervous of what she would do without him. Like, there's a little bit of something going on there too, I think. Like, why would he roll up, you know, to
on Billy's
mom's house and be like, oh, show your face. You know what I mean? Like, she could have stepped in the car. She could have, you know, that was to me a little bit of like a weird, or a flag of some sort.
Well, I feel like as a parent, he feels kind of neutered. He doesn't really have a way in to her emotionally or psychologically. She's not going to listen to reason from him because she hates him. You know, in many ways, she's acting out criminally to get back at her parents for not being great parents. But showing her the effects of drugs and of gangbanging, and you know, is his one way to kind of try to instill some sense into her. So he's kind of trying. I think he's trying to scare her straight, and also he also doesn't really give much of a shit. Like he doesn't trust her on her own, and he doesn't really care if she's exposed to some horrific stuff, because she kind of ruined his day.
Right. Well, also, too, I mean, to give him a little bit of credit, maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah.
Maybe he also wants her to see what he's been busy doing, why he hasn't been a good dad.
Totally.
I don't know if his character goes that deep yet, but you know what I mean? Like, maybe he's like, well, this is why I'm not here. Look what I do. Look what I deal with. This is why I'm pissed that you got, you know, you want to be treated like a criminal. Like, you want to be a criminal, I'll treat you like a criminal, like how he says when he handcuffs her to the chair. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's a lot going on there in that relationship.
Here's a question for you. Do you think that Joe Geddes considers himself a good person?
Yes.
Yeah?
Well, I think that he's unaware. Mm-hmm. I think he thinks he tries to be a good person. Like, I don't think he just thinks that, hey, I'm an asshole. I know I'm an asshole. Like, I don't think he has that cocky, douchey vibe about him. I think that he thinks what he is doing like the cards he's playing
Yeah.
are suited for the game that he's in.
Yeah.
I feel like that. I don't feel like he thinks he's a bad guy. No.
I kind of agree. I think that he's conflicted. I think that in many ways he considers himself a good guy fighting a losing battle.
Right.
You know, like he ultimately, you know, wishes that life was easier and that he didn't have to make such tough choices. Granted, he makes the wrong choices and he could make better ones.
But even so, like, we see that he's willing to throw people under the bus and he wants to pin McCann's murder on somebody else, but he didn't kill Katia when he was supposed to.
That's true. And
so there's some bond, whether it's just his bond with Frank or how that goes deeper, but there is an awareness of him that, like, this person means something to someone else, not even to me. So I'm going to go above and beyond and put my own ass on the line to save this person's life.
Yeah. And what he does for Danny at the end of the episode, he gives her the credit for putting Anton Bobek's connection to Billy all together by herself when she didn't know that it was necessarily Anton.
I mean, unless, which is totally possible, there's a bigger picture happening, and he
even
bigger, that he knew what McCann was up to. He knew that he had to kill McCann any way you sliced it. So he was just, you know, like, that was premeditated before the Katia situation. So he's like, let me gain this on Frank so that Frank will do this with me, so then I'll have a bargaining chip with Frank in the end. You know what I mean? Like, is he that smart to think that complex to cover his own ass?
It's entirely possible.
It's possible.
Well, here's what we do know. What we do know is that Brendan was working with Damon to take down Skelos.
Right.
Damon was working with Brendan so that they could get Skelos arrested, and then Damon, you know, in his own mind, would then ascend to be the new Skelos and take over Greektown.
We also know that Billy was working with Anton.
Yes.
And Brendan killed Anton.
Yes.
Cut him up.
Because Anton was a police CI, a confidential informant, who worked for Skelos but was reporting to the cops.
And Joe knows that happened. He was there.
Joe knows that happened. He knows that
he's never mentioned to anyone. He's never mentioned that to Frank. He's never mentioned that. So I don't know if he thought that body was already taken care of.
I'm sure that he did.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone through with this plan.
That's thickening the plot. Like, if that body wasn't in the trunk, that totally would have been a completely different game. Now there's, like, more and more layers of shit that they have to sift through to make sure that they've got their story covered.
That they get off scot clean. Exactly. Right. Scot free. It's definitely going to be very, very difficult for them both. I'm curious to see, because this is the second week in a row that Joe brought up, let's pin this on somebody. So when Danny makes that connection, he gets so excited and he gives her the credit. Is he going to try to pin Brendan's murder and Anton's murder on the now deceased Billy?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that's where that's going.
And I think he's going to do that without Frank's knowledge.
And he's going to inadvertently do that. He's not going to be like, well, Billy then did this. Like, he's going to try and have Danny figure out that conclusion. He's not going to, you know what I mean? Like, he's not going to push that along, but he's just going to encourage her to look in certain places so that it seems like she found it.
Yeah.
So that he's safe from Frank's opinion of, let's not throw anyone else under the bus.
But that doesn't even hold water, because there's no way that Billy would be that smart.
Right, but Joe's getting nervous.
Joe's getting nervous.
Joe's getting nervous.
And when you get nervous, you make mistakes.
Yep.
Totally.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Before we move on really quickly, I just want to thank everybody who has been downloading the podcast on iTunes and keeping us in the top 10 for the third week in a row. Thank you. We love feedback and we love reviews. So if you could review us and rate us on iTunes, that'd be really amazing. We love 5-star reviews.
We do.
We also love tweets and YouTube comments. We do read the feedback. We love knowing what you think about the show. Give us your theories about Low Winter Sun, and let's have this great conversation together.
Yeah. Give us some questions. I believe we're going to have a special guest next week, so definitely get some questions in.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be interesting. Maybe we'll get a little bit more of the inside scoop of what is going on.
Yes. As soon as we're able to confirm that special guest, we will be tweeting out the identity. I don't want to say who it is, just in case it doesn't happen. But we're really, really excited. About the potential. Yes.
I think it's gonna happen.
I think it's gonna happen.
But we'll just wait till.
We'll wait and see.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about Danny. She continues to impress me.
Yeah.
She's an excellent cop. She doesn't take any crap.
If she turns crooked, I'm going to be just up.
Exactly. Because how many true paragons of justice are there on this show? She's the only person who appears to be on the straight and narrow. Even Boyd, who, I think is a by-the-books cop, is so creepy that I can't help but suspect that he's up to something.
And he showed that tonight in this episode. He showed a little bit of vulnerability when he was having compassion for Joe with his daughter.
Yeah.
Like, I expected him to come over and, like, when Joe passed and, Boyd saw Joe pay off the officer so that she wouldn't get, written up, whatever. He saw that, and Joe was even like, yeah, that's another one for the books or whatever. And he came and he had compassion. I was surprised by that. I thought he was going to play on that dirtiness and make it into something bigger than it was. So you can tell he's been around the block, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, yeah, no. He was like, it reminds me of something that happened to me with a woman. And then when Joe rebuffs him, he's like, well, excuse me for having one moment of empathy.
Right.
Oh, by the way, this stuff happened and you're still a crook. Like,
right.
I'm really curious because we're getting all these extra little details about everyone else in the cast but Boyd. And I have to wonder when we're going to get his backstory.
Right.
It's going to be happening soon. But I just want to say that scene between Danny and Billy's mother, I just loved it.
Yeah.
It's so screwed up, and it's one of the reasons that I like this show so much is their Detroit is different from any other city I've seen on a crime show. The people, their attitude, the kinds of specifics, the landscape, it's very, very unique. And this screwed up mom who was dating a 17-year-old and is saying that her dead son was gay and was trying to steal her 17-year-old boyfriend. Crazy. But so crazy that it probably happened somewhere.
Right, and it could also be her using a defense mechanism because her son was just wanting attention from her because she was dating someone close to his age or younger. How old was Billy? Do we know?
Billy, I think, was 16.
Okay, so someone, like, if your mom was dating someone your age and giving them more attention, you'd probably be like, what's going on?
Well, yeah.
So I feel like, and the way that her mind is so twisted to even be doing that, it doesn't register to that. It registers as he's trying to take something away from me. And why would he try and take something away from me? Oh, he must be gay.
Yeah.
So I feel like she's a little twisted.
Yeah, kind of vile.
Yeah.
But
they all seem a little bit, and it's tough times bring out the worst in people. So, a lot of this stuff is, we take the story itself, but then if, Detroit as a whole, and even recently how it's filed bankruptcy, like, it's like these people are in desperate times. So I feel like that's a lot of why the attitude about a lot of the stuff is the way it is.
Yeah, it's like what Sean says late in the episode. He's like, a lot of people left, but some of us are still here.
Right.
Some people haven't left yet.
Right.
People are just abandoning that city.
Right.
So that's kind of like Danny's little bit for this week. She's kind of made a big leap in the case, and now she's going to be an integral part in either catching Frank and Joe or keeping them out of jail. Is going to be their manipulation of her. That is going to be the only way that they're able to stay out of jail, and we'll see her become a more central force next week. So. The big thing for me this week was the introduction of Sean and how, and also more of Maya's backstory.
Frank and Maya,
Yeah. So I kind of posed this theory to you while we were watching it, but I think that Sean, before he got hooked on the drugs, was Frank's partner.
I kind of agree with you. That strikes a chord, but I'm curious to see, was it before he got hooked on the drugs? Like, what made him get hooked on the drugs? Did something happen when they were partners that he couldn't deal with, and then he left and got hooked on the drugs? Or did he get hooked on the drugs and then kicked out of the force? Like, there's still, I'm very curious to how that's all intertwined, but there's a clear distinction. And then because the fact that Frank knows Maya and Sean, does that mean that Frank goes back to being dirty like back then? Like,
I don't think that
there's something.
Yeah, the chronology is very vague, but he obviously cares about Sean a great deal, and that's why I think he was his partner. I think that Sean probably was a heavy drunk while he was on the force, and probably got ran off the force when they discovered he was also doing drugs.
Right.
Maya says early on in the episode to Frank, it was his decision to live out on the street. So she probably tried to save him. She probably tried to keep their marriage alive, but he poisoned himself to the point that she just couldn't have it anymore.
Right.
But the interesting thing is, as we come to know more about her, is that she was a cop's wife.
I was just going to say that.
And now she's pressuring Damon to off Skelos.
And other cops have come into the bar, and she has not reacted or spoken to them the same way she spoke to Frank. It was very different. It was like there was more of a friendship or a bond there than when some of the other, like even when Joe came, you know what I mean? Like there was a very different, warm feeling.
Yeah.
So maybe her and Frank together tried to get Sean help. There's some bond there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, Frank, clearly Frank is trying to find out if they know anything to cover his own ass. He's like confiding in her, and I feel like he's bringing Sean back into the picture for a reason, to make sure that, no one knows anything.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a combination of that, but here's another interesting thing. So Maya, the warm way that she treats Frank, she also treats Nick, the kind of PTSD veteran, the same way.
Right.
It's
almost like a coddling.
Yeah, she's a very motherly figure who abandoned her own kids.
I was just gonna say, who we find out abandoned her own kids.
Yeah. And that, I guess, also plays into the whole drug thing. I imagine that when their father was going completely off the rails, she gave her kids up to her sister.
Right.
And still hasn't taken them back. Or at least her sister probably won't even let her have her kids back.
Right.
Because now she's knee-deep with thugs and criminals.
Right. And, did she have those kids, like, was Sean around for any of those kids' life?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a big timeline that's kind of missing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just thought that the guy who plays Sean, that performance was so great. So layered and so subtle. And it's this guy who's been on the street now for a considerable amount of time. He's kind of deteriorating. He's got this very bleak, but very kind of like matter-of-fact worldview. And he's not going to change. But then there's that heartbreaking moment when he's like, she's not a bitch, I'm an asshole.
Right.
He knows.
But also, for me, what stuck out about Sean was too that he kept saying he was happy now. So what was making him, because he's still clearly a drunk, he's living on the streets. What was so bad that this to him feels better?
Well,
like, what happened? Did he go dirty and get caught? Was Maya, making him be good cop, bad cop? Like, what happened to him?
Well, I have to imagine that if Sean was busted by IA, that it would have come up by now between Frank and Boyd. And, Boyd would say something like, you seem to have a habit of picking up dirty partners.
Right.
But I think, as we've seen, this job gets to you. It definitely gets to Joe and to Frank, and they're definitely very flawed people. So I have to imagine that being a cop in Detroit, he saw some screwed up stuff, and it was too much for him to handle. Especially...
See, I think it's a step deeper than that. I think he was involved in some screwed up stuff.
Well, I'm sure we'll find out later this season.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very curious to see what role he has to play in the shape of things to come. And as we continue to find out more about Maya, I want to know why she's asserting herself so much in this criminal enterprise. If she was someone who probably never imagined that she'd be involved in criminal activity, why did she get in bed with Damon and with Skelos? What attracts her to Damon? Like, I know he has this kind of intense ambition, and ambition is obviously very, very attractive, but you'd think she'd have the sense to not do it.
Yeah, but it's got to be the money too. If you think about it, in my mind, the way it works, it's like, so Maya and Sean had this bar together.
Yeah, which is not a cop bar. The International is not a cop bar.
Not a cop bar. But a lot of people started running drugs through there.
Yeah.
So it's almost the opposite. So she sees that this is happening, and she sees this, and there's got to be because she seemed very in charge, like 2 episodes ago when they were talking about the logistics of opening the house. You know what I mean? She was very in charge and very about the money, and from our first scene was her doing drugs herself. So there's that. To me, it's like the drugs and the money is what made her, and maybe she was even with Sean for the wrong reasons, to have somebody in the force keeping what she wanted to do going clean.
That's true.
You know, there could be that happening as well. Maybe she was using Sean, and that's why he's like, I hope she's terrible.
What if Maya's drug use is the reason that Sean fell off the rails? Like, he was an upstanding cop. His wife had a drug.
Telling his wife.
Yeah, his wife had a drug problem. She pressured him to start using, and then he fell even further off the wagon than she could have ever imagined.
It's possible.
Yeah,
it's possible that she led to the demise of Sean.
She's definitely a very tortured individual, and we're gonna find out more.
And very, very tortured, but not like
guilty.
Party pity of one. I mean, you know, whatever.
Party.
Yeah,
party
it's
of
not
one.
like she's like a pity party. She's very assertive.
Yeah.
She seems smart. And she seems aggressive.
Yeah.
And just like, no, this is the way it's going to be.
Yeah, a very, very cool, complex character from Sprague Graydon.
Yeah.
I'm really, really curious to see how deep she goes in this criminal enterprise.
I think she's going to go deep.
I think she's going to go very deep. All right.
Can't wait to see it.
Can't wait to see it. And I just loved that scene, just going back to Sean, between Sean and Frank. He's on Frank's doorstep, and he's his kind of like flawed logic. He's like, I have respect for you. I could have broken in, but I didn't. I got you a cat. I mean, before I found out that it's your neighbor's cat. And he's just sitting there smoking crack on the front porch. Frank goes in exhausted, gets a beer for each of them.
Pride and ego for me too, that he's sitting there like, I don't need to be here. I could have done this. I don't need you. You know, even though he's clearly needs him because he's smoking crack on the doorstep. You know what I mean? Like, I thought that was a real twist of.
Yeah. It was
so maybe Frank's bailed him out before.
I'm sure that he has plenty of times.
Yeah.
I just thought it was just a really cool, elegantly crafted scene, from the writing, the acting, the direction, the slow push towards the two of them, and then onto Frank's tortured face as he thinks about the fact that he may never see Katia again, and what he just did in the catacombs with this strange Katia, trying to purge those feelings. You know, the way he puts it, it's not like I'm in love with someone. It's just like, a woman got to me.
Yeah.
She got to me, and I shouldn't have let her in, because this always happens.
Right.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Let's talk Damon and Skelos and Ronnie T, who is basically the Damon of Reverend Lowdown's crew.
Right.
He's been running the girls in the abandon and helping run security and stuff like that. You know, Damon, the count is light.
Right.
And apparently Ronnie T's men have been skimming a little bit off the top.
Right.
He doesn't accuse Ronnie of this.
Right.
Outright. He just says, we're going to double the guard on all of them. They're not going to do anything without our watch. And then Skelos makes an appearance at the abandon.
Right.
Yeah.
A pretty memorable experience.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he, comes up, tells Damon pretty much that his place is shit, and then brings up Damon's past with his father, which even, makes the plot a little thicker.
Oh, yeah. Well, we had some things. We missed you last week on the after show, but we were speculating about Damon's father's connection to Skelos and how he feels about his father. And some of that was proven right. He thinks that his father was a loser from taking it from Skelos for so many years and being his errand boy. And that's where his ambition comes from. He wants to be everything that his father said he was going to be but didn't become, which is to be Skelos.
Right.
And, he and Ronnie T kind of have this bonding moment where he's like, hey, man, I would have played it the same way. These old timers, they got their code, whatever, but the young blood, we're coming up, Right.
And even with that, though, with the young blood coming up, Damon is very, it seems that Damon is very particular about doing things the right way, like not to step on people's toes. He's doing it on his side of town. You know what I mean? Like, he's not, I don't feel like he's trying to give like the big F you to Skelos. He's like, I don't need you. I'm going to do this my own way, which I think is different. Skelos kind of comes in with more of an attitude. Like Damon's would be like, okay, like he's not really out to prove a point, but he's not out to prove a point on Skilo's. Like he doesn't need Skilo to go down. He just wants to rise up.
Yeah. Well, again, it's Maya who says that Skilos needs to go down if he's going to be Skilos. Right. He's got ambition, but right now he's just trying to stay afloat.
Right.
Although Skilos has a point. He did not show the proper respect. He did not invite him over to his place.
Right.
Damon, though, you're right. He does try to do things the right way. He doesn't want underage girls.
Yeah, like he's trying to build his quote-unquote business for that business in a respectable way, I guess. You know, like he wants to make sure his money's good. He wants to make sure his girls are overage, you know, and even we see, you know, the crazy burning scene, you know what I mean? Like he wants to keep everybody, like he'll sacrifice his guys to make sure that everyone's cool.
Yeah. So. No, it was like a brief moment where we got to see, okay, he does care about people. Right. He's not completely lost as a human. I just don't think he knows any other way of life.
Right.
Yeah. Any other points you want to make on Damon and that whole side of things?
No, I feel like he's a little bit too big for his britches.
Yeah.
I get that feeling. Like it's not organized. Like as much as he wants it to be legit, so to speak, not clearly not legit, but as much as he wants like overage girls and the money to be right and all this stuff, it's not like if I was opening a business, I would make sure I had all my girls before I opened it. And clearly it's the grand opening. You know what I mean? Like all the ducks aren't in a row.
Yeah.
So that's going to come around somewhere to bite him in the ass.
He's not a professional, and he's going to overreach, and he's going to fall hard.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking.
All right. I say it's time we move into predictions.
Let's do it.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV
predictions. Stef Z, predictions for next week.
Predictions for next week. Well, we see a little bit. We see something happening in the bar. Maya hiding.
Yeah.
Who's coming in? Is it Skilos?
Is it IA?
I don't think it's IA. I don't think IA's coming in with a gun out.
That's true.
I don't think that's happening. I think that Frank is going to take a step too far with Katia very soon. I think that's going to bite him in the ass, and then people are going to start looking into him and why he's looking for this girl and figure out that this girl was connected and there when Anton was killed and Brandon was there. Brendan. Like, I feel like that's got to come out really soon.
Absolutely.
And I feel like the plot's going to thicken again with is it Sean with the gun that comes in to the bar?
Maybe he was hovering over it, watching it.
Does Sean turn crazy? It's possible. Does Sean get killed because he turns crazy? I don't know. Like, I don't think he's gonna. I think that his character is there for a couple episodes tops. I don't think he's gonna be extended through the end of the series. You know what I mean? Like, he's not gonna be there forever. So I feel like he's gonna come in with a bang and then be gone.
Okay.
So that's what I'm thinking.
I think that Joe is going to put his plan of pinning it on Billy into motion, and it's going to screw everything up. I think that he's going to put it into motion without telling Frank, and it's going to blow up in their faces big time and make it way more difficult for them to get off scot-free.
Right.
That's what I believe anyway.
Yeah, Joe's definitely going to screw things up.
Totally.
Because he's almost more scared than Frank.
Oh, he's way more scared because IA's looking into him. He's not looking into Frank.
Right.
Looking into Joe. Joe has more to hide. All right. Stef Z, where can the people find you?
The people can find me on Twitter and Instagram at IAMSTEFZ.
All right. And you can find me on Twitter at Matt Lieberman. That's MATTLIEBERMAN. You can also find me here on AfterBuzz TV on the Under the Dome and Breaking Bad after shows. Thank you so much, and we will see you next week.
From Bing.com, executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.